All right, I told you this week I went and saw The Sound of Freedom, which is quite an interesting movie. It was very on the low budget side, and we're going to get to that in just a moment, but it was very suspenseful the entire way through. This was a well thought out film, and of course, the subject matter just tugs at your heartstrings the entire time. It's crazy. I almost cried a couple times. I didn't. I didn't cry. Believe me. And so they really did a good emotional job with this. Now, at the beginning, it does come off a little disjointed. The first couple scenes are really good, and I'm going to go over the good and bad in this review just to be able to just be objective about this, just as a movie, taking the subject matter and all the other stuff aside. It starts out with two kids getting kidnapped in a Central American sort of area, and they get shoved into these buses. It's really sad, and then it shifts to Homeland Security agents doing their job and tracking down pedos. Now, the shift is interesting. They don't really do a great job of introducing the characters right off the bat. They do for the characters who are getting kidnapped. That full scene tracks really well. But the first few scenes, once it shifts to Jim Caviezel and his group, are a little disjointed. There's another Homeland Security agent who gets introduced, and he's not exactly important. He almost looks like the main character at first. So those couple scenes were probably not the best, but once it actually lands on Jim Caviezel and he starts to have his sort of moral crisis with the fact that America is not going out and actually solving the problem, they're just stopping the pedos who are at the American soil and then leaving the kids to fend for themselves. He goes, okay, we got to do something about this. It goes really well after that. And look, the effects are almost non-existent, and I love it. Honestly, seeing things where you're just seeing somebody walk down the street and talk in parking garages and have real conversations in coffee shops and things like that, rather than like these superhero movies where it's just like there's so much CGI crap flung all over the screen. It feels pretty nice. I mean, it feels like they just don't make movies like this anymore. And honestly, I like it a lot. I like the low budget nature of it. There's not a ton of action scenes in this movie overall. And despite that, you're gripped the entire way through because like this problem is so intense and so real that you're just like, oh God, he's got to get these bad guys before something happens. Now, there's some hammy dialogue over the course of this, and the way that they talk sometimes, even like the scene where it's like God's children are not for sale. It comes across like he's trying to deliver that zinger line, and that is a little over the top. But even with that, the main scenes where they're actually working on the problem, where things get worse for Jim Caviezel, just feel so viscerally real that he does a pretty good job here. Now, one of the most disturbing scenes in this is when he actually tries to work with the pedophile to get information, and he tries to pretend to be one of himself. And I just sat there and I'm like, wow, these like FBI / Homeland Security agents having to like actually do this. Now, I'm not a big fan. Of course, our government hunts down regular Americans more time than not and tries to catfish them. But the fact that he's doing this with pedo and actually trying to identify with that, I mean, how sick would you have to feel to actually do that, to try to capture these people? Absolutely disgusting. And I that was very visceral. Now, when he went and further tracked down, what happens is they rescue a young boy, but his sister is still trapped somewhere, and they don't know where she is. They think she's in Colombia. He ends up going down to Colombia, and of course dealing with that down there. And we know how sketchy Colombia can be, and it gets crazy because I guess Colombia was embroiled in a civil war. This stuff I didn't even know. And there's this whole rebel area that is just like complete savage land down there, controlled by warlords, basically, in the drug industry. And even the Colombian police and military won't go down there to deal with any of this. And so he has to fight that and goes down there by himself. It is absolutely riveting. It's absolutely dangerous. And even without, he's just rolling around in a little motorboat. I mean, we see a couple pieces of gunfire. Like I said, not a ton of action overall. I think there's one little fight scene with him and the drug lord kind of at the end of it, but it's still a muted one. And a lot of that is done in this film, and it's very intentional. And I really like this about the film also, because Alfred Hitchcock really did great with like Psycho with the shower scene. You have the curtain closed and you have the blood splatter, but you don't actually see what's going on. So it leaves it to your imagination. Now this has to be done in this context because with the kid situation, they can't put that kind of stuff on screen. Thank God they didn't. Because you don't even want to put child actors faking that into those sorts of scenarios. They just have somebody close the curtains and things like that, and you're left to the imagination what happens. And it leaves you disturbed. It really does well. There is an art to subtlety that is a good thing. And a lot of filmmakers with no limits these days have just totally lost that. But they did a really good job here. Alejandro Monteverde, who's the director, actually made those emotional connections with you over the course of the film where you didn't see a lot. Even at the end fight scene, like a lot of it, like the end of it kind of happens off screen where Jim Caviezel wins. And you kind of have to piece that together in your mind. And it works really well. Not only that, but it also keeps the budget down to where this is going to be a tremendously successful film without them having to expend a ton of money on effects and things like that. So it's a really good thing. I really like the subtlety aspect of it. I think the suspense is really good. It's very emotionally powerful all the way through. And it, as much as this was a disturbing movie, I found that it was a good movie all the way through too. So they did a great job on the writing level too. They opened things with a little girl singing, and they closed it with a little girl singing. So they got that like kind of circular closure, which is very important for writing also. And while some of the stuff, like I said, my main problems I'd say is like some of the dialogue came across as a little ham-fisted. And I would say that there was a little disjointedness as you were getting to know the Jim Caviezel character at the beginning of it. But beyond that, it was well written, it was well directed, and it was well acted. So you really can't complain about anything. I mean, I was looking at this and I'm like, can you imagine being one of the actors who has to play one of the pedophiles too? Like, I mean, gosh, you're going to be that role. That's tough. So, I mean, kudos to those people who actually had to like be the bad guy in this, because you don't want to be known as that. Your face, you don't really want associated with that. That's really tough. So they did a really good job all the way around. And because it's so real and so visceral, it does just amplify it up to the next level. So overall, this movie, I'd call it an 8 out of 10. I can't watch it again just because it's just such a disturbing thing. As a parent, I just it makes me sick to think about. But it is worth watching once. And I feel very similarly about Jim Caviezel's The Passion of the Christ. You see what Jesus endured and went through during that, and how horrifically torturous it was. And he shows that. I think everybody should experience that once. I don't know about seeing it multiple times, even though it's a brilliant, brilliant movie. So that's it. That's my review of this. I hope it helped you. And if you want to go see that, there's actually a way to go check this out. And they have free tickets available, so you don't even have to pay for it if you can't do so. So go check this movie out in theaters. I think it's worth it to go see it in theaters. I think that it provides a better emotional reaction that way, and it's a good thing. Leave a comment down below with what you think about this. Hit that like and subscribe button. Thanks for watching, my friends.